You know, they say about America, they say, diversity is our strength. You know?
I don't think I can control myself.
And I look at China, and I look at Russia. Can we give a round of applause for Russia? Yes. Absolutely, absolutely.
I want to say, I am Lak. I am Dagestani. I am Chechen, English, Russian, Tatar, Jewish, Mordvin, Ossetian.
I am black. I am gay. I am disabled. I am a woman.
I is a trans nigga.
My videos and posts have been downvoted by my own subscribers. Now, for me, this is a hardly rare occurrence as I like going against the current, but what surely has surprised me is the reason for the downvote, which is the amount of people who are either pro-Russia or pro-Putin. Because if you look at the public polling, then the picture is that over 80% of both Republicans and Democrats agree that the US should send Ukraine military equipment, and a majority of Republicans say that America has underreacted to Russia's aggression. Though, because this is constructed as a partisan issue, and had the Republicans been in power, I'm sure most of the Democrats would say the same thing, that it is not enough until you wipe Russia off the face of the earth, or something in that repertoire. But a pro-Russian position surely isn't popular, yet on social media, and especially in the dissident right circle, but also a little bit on the right, it seems to be kind of popular.
But let's not forget, in 1962, John Kennedy risked worldwide nuclear war rather than let the Soviet Union put missiles in Cuba. That's how much he didn't want a potential enemy stationing weapons close to us. Right or wrong, that is the way Russians feel about possible NATO membership for Ukraine. So there are two things about this that disgust me. One is the moral preening, as if we had never touched a hair on the head of a single Iraqi, Afghan, Libyan, Southeast Asian, or Serb.
When you look at who is to blame for this conflict, then partisanship starts to appear, with more Republicans being likely to blame the US, Ukraine, and NATO's expansion, while also mainly blaming Russia. I personally think that over 80% of the fault lays with Russia, and this invasion wasn't called for, but there is also up to 20% of the blame that I think lays with the forces that I have just mentioned. And if you want to hear about it more, then I recommend you to check out Mersheimer, Aiden Paladin or Paladin, and Richard Hanania, as well as other respectable people, because I don't want you to get the impression that I'm some sort of a neolib who pushes CIA narratives as I've been accused of. But if you want to understand these reasons within a context, within like an actual context of what has happened in the past few months, and not purely as a logical thought experiment that may explain just up to 20% of the variance, then I recommend asking the Russian officials themselves what the rationale for the invasion was, or the special military operation, or the liberation of Ukraine, or saving the Donbass people, but you will never get any answers because it seems like they don't know either. It changes depending on the mood of Mr. Putin and how the military operation is doing. Originally it was about NATO's expansion, or perhaps officially it was. Then it was about changing the government. Then Russia had no intention of changing the government after they've been beat up. And then it was about saving the people of Donbass after they have failed the Istanbul peace negotiations. And now, after its military situation has improved a little bit, it is about annexing southern Ukraine, and you can probably type down in the comments below what it will be about in the next week, but it will probably be obsolete in the next month because the operation will be under full control and going in accordance with the plan as it is now. And if you want to hear what Russians say their reasons are for an invasion, then you can head out to this video I have compiled and translated, and they are pretty much clueless as well. What do you feel about the situation in Ukraine? They're idiots. That's all. So what? Like, how could you kill a child, right? Like, I get you can kill an adult, but how would you kill a child? Who is killing those children? What do you mean who? They're killing themselves. So who's at fault? Zelensky. But this video isn't about Russia, or even Ukraine, as strange as it may sound. It is about the right and the projections that the right does with regards to Ukraine and Russia. You see, as sad as it may be, Amy Therese is relatively correct when saying that the Russian people nor the Ukrainian ones deserve any empathy, because we are a meaningless abstraction with no agency that is constructed by the American media to get a dose of empathy that is best deserved for Philadelphia, Detroit, and Joe Biden's brain aneurysm.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was in the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping, traveling with him. That's we traveled 17,000 miles when I was vice president. I don't know that for a fact.
And she's right, though as I have mentioned, just relatively right to her own mind frame in which everything is interconnected in some larger scheme, and maybe Putin has decided to declare a war on Ukraine, a special military operation, to distract us from COVID, because look at Zelensky, doesn't he look sus? See, he is supposedly armed and ready to defend Kiev, but this picture is from a year ago. Whoa, and doesn't this look like a green screen? Come on, it is a green screen, look.
There's not a flicker of light. There's not a movement of a leaf. This is a still image, clearly. There's a strong key light that's slightly above and to the right of Zelensky. There's a softbox that's in front of him, about 45 degrees to the right.
He has probably provoked Russia into invading his own country so that the world economic elite would finish one of their secret plans.
To welcome you for the first time here at the annual meeting in Davos. Last April, you won the presidential elections in Ukraine with a staggering majority of 73%. I think this is a dream for any politician to have such a majority. Much emphasis and hope has been put into your government's ability to reform the Ukraine from within.
What a son of a bitch. And it all makes me wanna support Putin now. You Democrats are so tiring with your political correctness.
I'm gonna put a tick in the box, okay? The first tick in the box is gonna be for an N, right? Now, second time it happens, right? Second tick in the box is gonna be for an I. You can see where this is going, okay? And we're gonna keep going, and eventually, once we've got a tick in every box and we've got all the letters hit, okay, I'm going to say the N-word. I'm going to say...
But I listened to him constantly using the N-word. That's the N-word. And he's constantly using it.
Look, I'm with the Ukrainian people and I empathize with them, but the cokehead of Kiev really has rubbed me the wrong way, and the fact that he doesn't order his country to surrender will lead to a lot of deaths. Why doesn't this psychopath just give up? Look, I've got a graph of historical weather in Bucha and it proves that Russia didn't do anything there. Zelensky, you are a war criminal. Why did you attack that park in Kharkiv? It serves no military purpose whatsoever.
A lot of military commentators, and myself included, by the way, have said that the Russians came in with 190,000 soldiers. That's not true. The Russians came in with 1,250,000 soldiers, 1,250,000 soldiers. And you're like, no, they didn't. And I'm like, yes, they did. Why? Because they're right the fuck there. Ukraine is on the border with Russia. You gotta like zoom out a little bit here.
But going back to my train of thought, this conflict is viewed within the lens of American politics. It is not viewed in the local lens. Ukraine's defeat, for whatever reason, means a defeat for the global homo, an American-led liberal world order, while a Ukrainian victory means the victory of the global American empire, and the Ukrainian people, in case of victory, suddenly will become less nationalistic and embrace mass migration and all the things that are associated with the American way of life. Leftoids, except for Chomsky on the other hand, see the exact same thing, but wording it slightly different. Russia is a far-right white supremacist country that surely doesn't want to unleash anti-colonialist and anti-racist crusade against the West while jail Russian nationalists at home, and I'm not making this up, he really did say that. And Ukraine is a democratic they-them country with a sexually fluid Jewish president who just wants Ukraine to be added into the alphabet. This is why you see memes like that flowing around, perceiving the war in Ukraine being for the sake of up-dudes, and consequently everyone projects their ideology into the things that have no Western culture style war attached to them. Right now, just sitting in a cloud, oh wow, I'm here right now. Yet the most basic understanding of the Ukrainian war is explained by this meme. Support for Ukraine stands for supporting the current thing, while opposing the current thing is a code for Russian support. As simple as it may sound, I promise you that this explains about 80% of the support for Russia among the right. You see, a right-winger doesn't just hear what the head of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Sergei Lavrov, says about Zelensky being a Nazi in a marketplace of ideas, and then after hearing a counter-argument that goes like, "Nuh-uh, he can't be a Nazi because he's Jewish," which Lavrov convincingly demolishes with, "That's okay, because some Jews can be Nazis. I mean, look at Hitler." So Zelensky might after all be a Nazi, and as convincing and professional as Sergei Lavrov may be in his delivery that I'm sure has convinced at least 2% of the US population, no, support for Russia doesn't emerge in an exchange of pure logic in a marketplace of ideas, free of bias, much like many right-wing ideas would emerge. It emerges in a vicious opposition to the current thing. Conservatives and many right-wingers for that matter at this point are simply doing everything opposite of what the current thing would demand them to do, and Ukraine simply became the current thing. It's not the fault of Ukraine, it is the fault of the current thing. Now, put a sense of tribalism attached to it, and then you can see the bigger picture. All the shitlibs now support Ukraine and post their annoying crap all over the place as they did with COVID and BLM, while the support for Russia is seen as edgy, as part of being the underdog, a free thinker that had opposed the vaccine mandates and the BLM back in the days of shitlib tyranny, and now will oppose the far left Ukraine, which doesn't have any left-wing parties in its parliament, and join the Z counterculture. Now, you may say that I make this up, but no. I got very strong empirical evidence to support this. For example, if you have complied with the boosters, the belief that Russia is committing war crimes in Ukraine is at 88%, but if you are a based anti-vaxxer, then your belief is at 32%. That is to say, you are so much against the regime in the US, and because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, you are left with supporting sides that you perceive to be enemies to the regime under which we live and suffer. And the support for Russia is not really a support for Russia. It is the opposition to the current thing, because most of the people that are quote-unquote pro-Russia in my poll on Telegram that you could read, where I often post cool things and original thoughts, voted neutrally, but still think that Russia is winning because they are in an echo chamber of people who also think that Russia is winning.
I want to talk about what so many people on the internet are talking about, which is the stalled Russian invasion. I mean, I wish somebody would tell the Russians that they're stalled, because, see, I'm in Kharkov, in the middle of this battle, and I can literally see the Russians getting closer every day.
I can see them.
If you look at the most hardline supporters of the Z war, they are usually the people who have been strongly targeted by the regime, like Nick Fuentes, who, by the way, also supports China just for the same reasons, because he perceives it will weaken the US regime, which further contributes to my argument, and in fact is tactically understandable. Finally, if you want to get serious and actually discuss the multipolarity aspect of the war, which has been a major reason for supporting Russia, then I can only say that Russia has fucked it up. And not just reputationally, but also militarily. A Eurasian civilization hasn't emerged out of this war as Dugin would fantasize about. It more or less seems like people have solidified their support for NATO and the EU, while the support for whatever Russia is doing has instead declined significantly.
I agree that gender is social construct. It is not something biological, because I don't believe in biology, but I think we could choose.
And perhaps it has discredited the idea that Russia is a separate civilization or should go a separate way. And I say that as a person who is for multipolarity, though I don't view Russia as an Eurasian civilization, but want it to more or less become as any other Eastern European country who should be a center of power in and of itself inside Europe, as ideally there should be multiple centers of power and that no country should dictate the rules for other countries, much like the US is doing right now, and yes, Russia. And I want to tell you a secret that has been laying in front of your eyes for like 20 years if you haven't been very attentive. Eastern Europe, while being in the EU, is not cocking up to the global homo or whatever you wanna call it, but actually stands for the interests of their people without going back to the Stone Ages. And purely out of pragmatic reasons, multipolarity is best realized when states have relative level of development, and it is worst realized when all the liberal countries are rich and full of life, while all the authoritarian countries are poor and full of despair. Anyways, that's all I want to say. Thank you for watching, and I would like to apologize for being away for so long, and I'll be posting videos more often now. See you soon.